Hey, Facebook. Sorry, coming to you from a dark car tonight. Sorry about that. It's been a day, huh? On a whole lot of levels, both national news and for me driving around the district. I'm now sitting in the parking lot of the Mountainside Cafe, which I can recommend, although they do not serve dinner. I'm on my way back from an event in Torrington. The last of the day was to in honor of Blondin Eye Care and Legal Services, which has been in operation in Torrington for a long time, providing all kinds of medical, optical, legal services in Torrington. So it was nice to honor them tonight. And before that, this evening, I was in Sharon honoring the retirement of Ella Clark. And it really struck me as a moment, not only has Ella done extraordinary service in Sharon and throughout the region on behalf of the elderly and people who have needed assistance for a long, in a variety of ways. But she at one point, somebody was one of the many people in the room who have relied upon her vast knowledge of how to connect people with help. Was talking about how they always reach out to Ella, and Ella sort of quipped that, I was probably just making it up. And it struck me that in a way she did, because she created so many nonprofit organizations that have sprung up in her wake, including Tour Service, the Fuel Bank, organizations which are alive and vibrant today. And she has a fabulous replacement in Sharon named Miriam Jones, who's going to do a fantastic job. And it's that kind of service that not only did she do, make people's lives better in our northwest corner, but she inspired other people to come up in her wake and do service. And so she's left just an impressive legacy. And it was just great to be with people in Sharon tonight honoring that. Then I had a lot of transportation-themed things happening this week. I went to a briefing, the governor's chief of staff had a briefing on a new sort of rollout for transportation or infrastructure investment called CT 2030. And it's sort of a reboot on, some of you may remember, tolls, which has turned into a divisive debate and kind of didn't go anywhere after a while. And this, I think, is a good attempt to sort of flip things around and start with the fact that there is just widespread, strong agreement that we need to invest in our infrastructure. And so let's start with that goal and figure out what that looks like, and then use a multiplicity of approaches to figure out how to get there. And one of the interesting pieces of good news there is that there are some potentially really interesting federal programs that could be able to get the state some money and reduce our cost of doing this. So stay tuned. Then we had a meeting of the COG in our region, the Council of Governments, which includes all of the towns in my district, plus many more, at which Commissioner Giletti from Department of Transportation came and talked to everyone about CT 2030, the governor's plan, but also about how, the finding a funding stream for the major infrastructure repairs that we need to make enables there to free up other resources to spend on the things that we need. I do a lot of tours of potholes of the northwest corner, and also hear a lot from a number of you about calcium chloride and magnesium chloride on the roads and how corrosive that can be. And so we had a conversation today about the trade-off of safety and environmental problems, and also problems sand causes, and all the various things that have to be balanced in order to figure out what's the best mix to use on our roads to protect people, but also protect our environment. And I came away convinced, Commissioner Jill, definitely taking a look at this and figuring out, given that we know more today than we did when we put this in place, that we're taking a look and trying to improve how we handle our roads. But that will always be a major topic in the Northwest Corner. I hear from a lot of you about roads, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. And finally, we closed that COG meeting. There was a new nonprofit that I thought was interesting springing up called Wheels of Opportunity, which focuses on the fact that the lack of transportation in our region, and there's been some news, we don't have mass transit in our area, and in fact, the number of buses from Torrington into New York or other locations of the state have diminished, and Peter Pan recently left, or closed down, is about to. So we really are, people are public transportation is a major issue for us. And so this Wheels of Opportunity is an organization. I'll put some information about it in the newsletter. But it's basically finding ways to connect. It's run by a couple of people out of Northwestern Connecticut Community College who've noticed that a lot of their students can't get there, and they want to connect students who are there for job training to the jobs that are actually available. And so they're modeling it after some successful programs in other states that people have donated cars, sometimes seemingly unusable cars, and gotten them refurbished and in the hands of people who really need them in order to get to job training and to jobs. So I thought that was a really interesting and a hopeful piece of new organization. And then so one other, I'm going to really stretch the metaphor here, piece of transport. I was at Torrington Middle School earlier this week for the ribbon cutting of their new fitness trail, which I was there with Representative Michelle Cook, and I were both there to celebrate that, and we were both very tempted to get up on the rings and see what we could do. But it was also a very hot day. But there were a lot of people out there so proud of what they've put together for the kids, and people who have been deeply invested in school for so many years, and that was a real treat. I also spent time at Torrington High School this week at a Ban the Book event, which is not in favor of banning books, to be clear. It's an event at which people read from books that have been banned over the years, and so it's an opportunity to talk about the First Amendment and how banning books, in particular when government has in the past, or small governments, or local governments or federal governments have taken the view that a certain viewpoint, a certain opinion isn't safe to release to the public, and how dangerous that is to just erase a certain viewpoint from the conversation, and that that it often tends to be influenced in our history by corporate interests and people who believe in a certain set of policies, and they don't, they're trying to protect their viewpoint. And so I happened to write my thesis in college on a book that was banned, so that felt important to me. And then we had a really great conversation about how you balance First Amendment rights, because in fact we do balance them. It's the First Amendment, it's not the only amendment, and we have lots of rights that have to be balanced in this country, and so the question is how you balance public safety against the First Amendment. And the kids were really had some great illustrations and viewpoints on that, and so that was a fantastic conversation. Then another piece of news this week that trying to read my own handwriting in the dark car. I apologize for that. Is I wanted to talk about sorry, can't read that. So there's been the Comerford Zoo, which is a traveling zoo, which is based in Goshen. And there was news this week because one of their elephants, who was quite elderly, died while at the Big E circus. And I've received thousands of emails about this from animal rights activists. The vast majority from people, not people within even Connecticut, but people from around the country, who are advocating for animal welfare, and people care deeply about this. And so I am paying attention. I can't read 3,000 emails, and I searched through them as much as possible to find who might be my constituents in there, and found a couple and responded to them. What I want to say is that what's really important here isn't people's are the facts. I've also spoken to people who have worked with the Comerford Zoo, for them, with them, seen them over the years, officials in Goshen who've been familiar with them over the years. And I think it's important to take a moment and try to understand exactly what happened here. And so I have also been speaking with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, who is looking into the license and to make sure that whether there have been any violations of various kinds. And so I am someone who takes a pause and wants to get answers rather than leaping to solutions. And although I personally am not would rather see elephants, we know more and more every day about animals and how much more like us they are than we realized. But I want to make sure that we understand exactly what's happening here, and there are a lot of people who have come to certain conclusions without information, and so I think it's better to take a pause. I am in favor of investigating those things, so stay tuned to that, because I know a lot of people are paying attention to that. And then finally, just to upcoming events. I going to an event for the Y, the Northwestern Connecticut Y, to help raise some money for them. And I wanted to mention that the United Way is kicking off its campaign. They do incredible work in our region, and I'll put a little link to that on our newsletter as well. And then finally, on a personal note, I'm going off this weekend to celebrate my 25th anniversary. Yay! Tom Quinn, who married me a little over 25 years ago. So here's to all of you who have had long and healthy marriages, and so I'm looking forward to getting away for a couple days, and I'll see you next week. Have a good evening.